Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. My name is Amber for those of you who haven't met me, and I will be your instructor today. I am going to walk you through how to paint this yummy looking ice cream cone. Doesn't that look delicious and so appropriate for the nice spring weather we're having? So to get started, you will need a few supplies. If you would like to purchase supplies from me, I will be at the golf course tomorrow, Sunday, from 10:30 to 11:30, and you can buy just an outlined canvas with your ice cream already drawn out for you, or you can purchase a blank canvas if you want to draw it on your own. I will also have paint and brushes if you don't have those at home too. So 10:30 to 11:30 tomorrow at the golf course if you want to buy supplies, or if you have supplies at home, you can use those as well. Use whatever resources you have. I'm using a canvas board, and as you can see, it's a bit smaller than this 8x10 board, so I'm just utilizing what I have. You can also just draw and color your ice cream cone on regular paper. You can paint on wood if you like. I love painting on wood. Has a nice rustic and natural look in the end, so you can do that. If you have cardboard, you can draw on that. Whatever you have, use the resources you have at home. You will also want a few brushes. I like to have a nice fine tip brush for those small areas and the details, and then a medium-sized brush, whether it's a flat brush or a more round brush, whatever you're comfortable painting with. You'll want one of those too. A pencil if you're drawing on your own. You'll want a plate for your paint. This is just a styrofoam plate, but if you have like an old yogurt lid, you could use that. You'll want a napkin to wash your brushes off in between colors, and then a water cup. I use old yogurt cups for my classes. This is actually ricotta cheese, but you can use just a regular glass as well and wash it afterwards. I also like to cover the space that I'm painting on because it's super easy to clean up. You just roll the tablecloth up after you're all done painting and either throw it away or reuse it afterwards. If you don't have a tablecloth, I've used trash bags as well, or you could find an old t-shirt and lay that underneath so your kids aren't super messy on your table. Again, your table washes, so if you don't have anything to cover, you can always just use good old rag and water afterwards to clean it up. So whatever you're comfortable with. You also need paints. I am using this brand called Cheap. It's from Craft Warehouse, and I really like this paint because it's affordable and it's a nice quality, so you have a nice finish with your painting in the end. But you can also get acrylic paints from Walmart if you'd like. You can use, again, watercolors if you would like to follow along in that medium. Your kids can just use crayons, oil pastels, color pencils, markers, whatever you want. You can still follow along in this video tutorial and not use paints. Again, whatever you're comfortable with. I will walk you through step by step how to paint our ice cream cone. But if you've painted before or you're drawing or whatever, you're more than welcome to just kind of go rogue and do your own thing afterwards, or in the end you have to live with it. So if you want polka dots in your background, stripes in your background, you can totally do that. If you don't want mint ice cream here, you don't have to paint that. If you want chocolate here instead of strawberry, feel free to make this your own and do whatever you want. Sound good? All right, so let's get started with drawing our ice cream cone. And I'm gonna start off by drawing the cone itself. So this triangle shape we have here in the bottom. You're going to start off by drawing two angled lines that extend off of your canvas or your paper, just like this. So it kind of looks like a V or a triangle without the point here at the end because it's hanging off of our canvas. Make sure when you're drawing that you're drawing with light lines. You're not pressing too hard with your pencil for a couple of different reasons. One, if you make a mistake and you have to erase it, it's harder to erase dark lines versus the light lines. And then two, when you're painting, if you're painting with light colors, like for example, this green is pretty light. If my pencil lines were really dark, it would take a couple coats of paint to cover over those lines. So then you're just, using more of your resources and wasting it, so to say. So just make sure when you're drawing with real nice light lines. This one is a little bit darker than what I draw with, just so that way you could see it clearly in the video. So you have your V or triangle shape for your cone. Next, we're going to draw the bottom ice cream scoop, and you can see these lines are kind of cloud-like. So that's what we're going to draw. Right along the top of where our lines are is little clouds. So they're fluffy and billowy like. Just like this. So that's going to be our first scoop, which is the bottom scoop of our cone. And then right above that, you're going to draw another set of clouds. And this is really just going to make your ice cream look nice and full and fluffy. See that there? And you can see it's not touching my bottom one. So I want to make sure I draw another line right here to connect the two. So that way it looks like one scoop on top of the other. Just like that. And even my drawing is not perfect. You can see this line kind of overlaps. So I can easily go back and erase that line. Again, making sure that you're drawing real lightly so when you erase it, you don't see it. And now we want to draw that top scoop of ice cream, our final scoop. Just like this. So I have 3 scoops of ice cream on my ice cream cone. If you want to draw 2, 4, 20, whatever you want to draw, whatever you're comfortable with. The last thing I'm going to do is draw my little details. So you can see here, I have a cherry on top. I have some fudge or caramel dripping along the top ice cream scoop. And then I also have down here where it looks like it's dripping off of the cone. You don't have to add these details if you don't want to, but I will show you how in case you do. So for your cherry, you're just going to draw a nice little circle at the top there, kind of hanging off the side. You can put it right in the center if you want. I just like it a little off-centered. And then I can go ahead and erase that line from the scoop that goes right through it. And then for my ice cream, for my fudge on top of my ice cream, I'm just going to draw what looks like it's kind of a melting line or a paint splatter. There's no right or wrong for this part, for any of it to be honest, just whatever you're feeling like. Whatever kind of nice squiggly shape you want there for your fudge or your caramel. And then last but not least, if you want to add the drip of ice cream, you're just going to add what looks like a teardrop right there. And then another one that is connected to your ice cream, so it looks like it's melting. And then again, you can erase this line right here from what connected to your ice cream. All right, so there we have it, a nice ice cream cone. I am not going to draw the lines in the cone or the chocolate chips or the polka or the sprinkles, just because that's more for you to paint around. It's kind of a pain. So we can add those details once we start painting. So just to get started, you just want a basic ice cream cone outline. And then you're all done with your pencil, so you can set that aside. And we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to paint is our background color. So you can see in my painting here, I have a blue background with some yellow stripes going through. But my stripes are more whimsical and feathered-like. They fade more into the blue rather than having harsh striped lines. So I'm going to show you how to achieve this technique, but if you want to paint just a solid color background, if you want to do polka dots, if you want to do stripes, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But for this tutorial, I'll show you how to get this effect. So I'm going to start off with my blue for my background, and you could use just the blue I have here on the plate, but I want to make it a little lighter. So to make a lighter shade of a color, you're going to add it to white. So by mixing the two, now I have a light blue color. So it's not as dark looking. It'll make my background a lot lighter, kind of like this sky blue. And when I'm painting with acrylics, I always want to make sure to add a couple drops of water to my paint and mix it together. This just helps thin the consistency and it brushes along the canvas a little smoother. And while you're painting, sometimes you'll have to dip your brush back into the water. That way, it's always wet. You don't want to add too much water because otherwise, one, you could have a mess on your canvas. It could take forever to dry. Or if you add too much water, the final product's going to look more watercolor-like, which if that's the style you like, awesome. But if you're wanting your colors to be nice, rich, and solid, you don't want to add too much water. Sorry, tickled my throat. All right, so now that I have my sky blue color, I also want to make sure I have ready to go my yellow here that I'm going to streak into the blue. So as I'm painting my background, I want to make sure that I'm painting around my ice cream cone that I just drew. If you paint inside your ice cream cone, that's going to be more that you have to cover up with your ice cream colors. And one, it could be hard to cover up if you're trying to paint a light color over a dark color, and it's wasting paint as well. I'm very frugal, so I do everything I can not to waste supplies. You'll be able to see here, if you're using a canvas board, there's a little bit of depth to our canvas. So what that means is, if we don't want our edges to be white, like you see here, you just want to make sure you paint them the same as your background color. So as I'm painting my background, I want to make sure I get those edges with the blue as well. So that way when I have it displayed, it all looks like it's a seamless, wrapped background. So, as you're painting your background, if you're adding another color, like that yellow on top of it, the best way to make sure that your colors kind of blend together and they don't look like two different colors on top of one another is to make sure you do it while the paint is wet. So I just painted this blue here in the corner, and while it's still wet, I'm going to dip just the tip of my brush in some yellow, and I'm going to lightly, with a light hand, so I'm not pressing too hard, I'm just kind of making it flow over top of the blue. I'm going to brush yellow right over top. And if you do this while the two paints are wet, then you'll have a nice soft edge between the two colors. If you wait for your colors to dry, then it's going to have a real harsh line and it won't look like it's blending. Now when I mix the yellow with the blue, it has more of a green tint to it because when you mix blue and yellow, you get green. So if you don't want this effect, if you don't want your background to have any green in it, you will want to make sure your blue is dry. And then what you'll do is when it's dry, just make sure you have more water to your yellow and real softly brush it on and just kind of feather it over top of your blue. So see how that's a little more yellow right there because the blue is dry. But if you don't want it to be a harsh line, you're just going to wash your brush out, dry it on your paper towel over here, and then just go real lightly over the edge of the yellow into the blue. So it appears brighter in color than it does right here. All right, so go ahead and finish painting your background, and then when we rejoin, we'll paint our ice cream cone. Okay, so now that we have finished painting our background, you can see everything around the ice cream cone is painted, and I have my yellow streaks over top of my blue. Now if you ever have too many streaks, or maybe it's just too much color of yellow right there and you don't like it, you can always take your blue that you used or whatever color you use for your background and paint over top of it. So the nice thing about acrylics is if you don't like it, you can just let it dry and paint right over it. So just keep that in mind. Don't be too harsh on yourself. The next thing we're going to paint is our ice cream cone itself. So just like the blue, I'm going to take a little bit of brown, again just the tip of my brush here dipped in brown, and I'm going to mix it in a pile of white to make a light brown color. That way I can get a nice cone, like a waffle cone or sugar cone color. Now you always want to start with just a little bit of brown, because even if it's not as dark as you want it to be, you can always add more brown to it. So you can see that color is pretty light. It's more like a beige. So I can always just scoop up some more brown and add more brown to that white mixture. You always want to add the dark color, just a little bit of it, into your white versus the opposite, adding a little bit of white into your pile of brown, because it's going to take more white if you are adding it to your brown to lighten it, versus if you start with just a little bit of brown and mix it in your pile of white to get that color you want. So that's a nice light to medium brown color for my cone. Again, make sure you add a couple drops of water to your paint. And you can see it didn't take very much paint at all. You don't need to squirt out, you know, a quarter size of paint, just a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to paint our cone, waffle cone, sugar cone, whatever type of ice cream cone you're painting. And you're just doing that bottom triangle spot for where your cone is. I'm just painting it a solid brown right now, that nice light brown I made. I'm not worrying about these dark lines to get that texture of a cone right now. Just painting it one solid color. And again, I'm following the lines of my ice cream. I don't want to have to paint more of my ice cream color to cover up my brown. So I'm just painting in the lines. If you accidentally paint into your ice cream scoop, not a big deal. You can cover it up. You just don't want to do it on purpose, because again, you're wasting more paint, and if you're painting with light colors, it's going to take more to cover it up and fix that mistake. So you want to color or paint in the lines as best as you can. Again, don't forget the edge right here. That way when it's all done, you don't have any white showing. So just a nice coat of brown paint. Everyone see that? Once you have a nice coat of brown paint, you are going to let that dry. We're not going to add our lines until it's all dry. Otherwise, if you add your lines, the two colors are going to blend together. And for this part, you want nice, crisp lines so you get that full effect of texture. So now I'm going to wash my brush out. It's important that you wash your brush in between each color really well. Otherwise, if you still have brown in your paintbrush and you try and do your green for your mint ice cream, the two colors are going to mix together and it'll look kind of muddy. When I wash my brush, I just lightly tap it along the bottom. I'm not jabbing it, I'm just lightly tapping. That'll help get the paint out of your bristles without ruining your bristles. And then I just rub it along the side to help get any paint that's further up in the brush. And then I dry it off on my napkin. So my first flavor of ice cream is my mint here, my favorite. And then I have strawberry ice cream and vanilla on top. So we're going to work with our mint, with our mint first, then go to the middle, and then the top. Again, paint whatever flavors of ice cream you want. Since I just painted that brown and I don't want my hand covering it and getting smudged, I'm going to flip it upside down so that way I don't get any paint on my arm. So to make your mint color, if you're doing mint, you're just going to add a little bit of green to a pile of white. Oops, my strawberry's mixing with my mint. And then same for strawberry. You're gonna mix a little bit of dark pink with a pile of white. Or if you have red, you can mix a little bit of red with white, and that will make pink. I have magenta, so I just made it a little bit lighter. All right, so you're going to paint each of your ice cream scoops 3 different colors. And then once we're done with that, we will get back together. Okay, now that we have each of our ice cream scoops painted and our hot fudge at the top, you can see here in my brown, because it's a lighter color, there's a few spots where it's thin looking, where it looks more white than brown. You can either cover that up with a second coat, or if you don't want to do that, since we are painting those brown lines over the top, it'll cover up most of that and you won't really see it. But if you want to, you can go through and add another coat anywhere where it seems a little thin or there's white showing. Don't forget your drip here if you didn't do that. So now that we're done painting our ice cream scoops, we're going to do the little cherry on the top. And you can see it does not take very much paint at all. I have just a little bit of red right here, and I'm going to paint a nice red circle to top off my ice cream. Again, if you don't want the cherry on top, you don't have to add it. It does give it a nice pop of color and a nice finishing touch though. Kind of makes your ice cream look complete, like a sundae. So nice red circle at the top. Especially if you're doing light colored ice cream colors. This red is very bold and vibrant, so it kind of gives it that finishing feel. So just like that. Now all we have left to do is add our finishing touches. So we have our texture of the cone, the lines. I have some chocolate chips in my mint ice cream, and then some sprinkles on top, and our stem. So I'm gonna work bottom to top and show you what I do to finish it off. I'm making sure I'm washing my brushes so that way paint doesn't sit in my bristles, otherwise that could ruin your brushes as well. And now I'm gonna switch to my fine tip brush here. And for the lines of my ice cream cone, I'm going to use just that dark brown straight from the tube. That'll complement the light brown that we have as the base coat really well. Now this step, you do want to make sure you have water with your brown. The more liquidy, so to speak, it is, the easier it is to brush a nice smooth line over across your paint. And when you're painting, you won't have like a jagged or impartial line. So it just makes it a little more fluid. And then you're going to choose a direction to start off with. So you can see there's one direction here, and then there's a cross direction to get that hashtag looking appeal. So I'm going to start with one direction, and I'm going to paint stripes or lines all the way down my cone. And you just have to eyeball this. It's not going to be perfect, but when you're done, it's going to look like an ice cream cone. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just draw some nice straight lines on there. The lines may not be perfectly straight either, and that is totally fine. Nobody is perfect. You can see with my lines here, some of them are a little thicker, a little thinner. They're not perfect, but they give that appeal and look of a waffle cone. So we're just drawing our lines on our ice cream cone right now. Going one direction to start. And then once you get them all the way on, we're going to switch directions and add lines to get that effect of your cone, kind of checkered like. You want to take your lines to the very edge of your cone and then to the edge of your ice cream scoop. Trying not to cross your lines into your background or your ice cream. If you accidentally do, we can always fix it in the end. Now if you want your lines to be darker than how they appear when you first get them on, let them dry and you can always add another coat. But for the most part, this should do the trick. So you can see not perfectly straight, not equally apart, but it gives you that look of a waffle cone. Some nice texture. Okay, so once you are done with that part, we're going to wash our brush out, get all the brown out of our brush. And how about we switch to sprinkles? Those are pretty fun to do. So I'm going to add some sprinkles to my vanilla ice cream at the top. And I don't know if you can tell, I did add a white coat of paint. If you don't, you'll notice that you can tell it's canvas underneath because your paint has a slight shiny finish. And so if you leave this unpainted, it's going to be dull looking compared to everything else. So I always still paint it white even though your canvas is white, so that way it looks like it's consistent and shiny all the way across. For your sprinkles, the easiest way to achieve these nice looking dots is to use the end of your brush. So instead of the bristle part where it's soft and bendable, we're going to use the end of our brush because it's hard and it'll give you a nice dot. So what you're going to do is just pick a color, either one that's on your plate or you can choose a different color from a tube, and just lightly dip it in your paint, and you're going to press down and make a nice dot, just like that. And you're going to continue this across your vanilla or whatever type of ice cream you have there at the top. So I'm going to do my blue sprinkles first. Since it's on my brush, I don't have to wash colors off in between. I can just finish the blue sprinkles, and however many you want. And then you're going to wash that color paint off the end of your brush and switch to a different color. So I'll switch to red and start dotting red in between my blue dots. Again, you can use whatever colors you want for your sprinkles. You can have just a one color sprinkles, 2 color, 10 color, whatever you want. My daughter likes to get a little crazy with this and have every color of the rainbow on there. So if that's what you want to do, you're more than welcome to. So there's my red and blue sprinkles. Again, washing my brush off in between my colors so they don't mix. And let's get some yellow sprinkles. So now I'm going to dot some yellow on there. Yellow is a little harder to see just because it's so light, but once you get enough dots on there, you can tell there's yellow sprinkles in there. And some yellow sprinkles. So now it looks like sprinkles on top. Again, make sure you wash the paint off of the end of your brush. It's not going to ruin it like it would if you left it in your bristles, but it's still just nice to wash it off and have a clean slate, a clean brush. So our other detail we have for our ice cream scoops, if you did mint, is your chocolate chips. And you can see I just did triangle chocolate chips. That's all they are, is just a bunch of brown triangles across my mint colored. So my brown that I used for my stripes, I'm just going to go and paint some nice triangles for my chocolate chips. These can be different sizes. They can be going different directions. It does not have to be uniformed. After all, your ice cream is not uniformed in the tub of ice cream. So you're just going to add some nice triangles for our mint ice cream if you painted mint ice cream. If you didn't do mint ice cream, you can always add some other little details to your ice cream scoops. You can add more sprinkles if you want. You can make it look like your fudge is dripping further down. Whatever you want to do. For my chocolate chips, you can see this one right here is a little skinnier and more tall. This one here is a little more fat. So you can have different variations of your chocolate chips. It does not have to be the same. And however many chocolate chips you want here. You can have a little bit, you can have a lot, depending on how chocolatey you like your mint chocolate chip ice cream. And then don't forget too, if you're adding some details in this bottom ice cream layer, to make sure you have it going with your drip as well. So I added some chocolate chips here in my drip of ice cream. All right, I think I have enough chocolate chips here. So that is chocolate chips, sprinkles, and a waffle cone effect. The last thing we have to finish our ice cream is a couple highlights. You can see there's a white swoosh on top of the cherry, some white in our chocolate fudge. I have some to make it look like my ice cream is fluffy, kind of billowy. So now we're just adding what's called highlights, and that's all of those white lines. It just gives it a more realistic effect. It adds some depth instead of looking kind of flat like it does here. You can see the difference that the highlights give with and without. So I'm just going to go through now and add some white highlights. Again, adding water to my white so that way when I brush it across the paint, it has a nice smooth fluid line. So just using my fine tip brush still and my white paint, I am adding highlights. These can be as thick or as thin as you'd like. There's no right or wrong. And then you can add as many or as little as you want. Always start with just a couple. Just a few there. If you add too many, you don't like it, you have to let it dry and then paint over it. So just start with a few. You can always add more if you want. I'm going to add some here in my pink ice cream just to give it that look of the ice cream being piled on top. And then I'm going to add some in my mint. Here, though, is a different technique. If you want to stick with the same color, that green, you can add just a little bit more dark green into the light green you made, and then have more of the same shade or same hue swooped in there. So you can either do the dark green on top of the light, or you can just stick with white like I'm going to do in this tutorial. Whatever your preference is. I'm adding a highlight to my drip so that way you can really see it. Remember, just a few goes a long ways. So there are some highlights in my ice cream, my fudge, and my cherry here on top. You can even add a highlight in your ice cream cone if you want as well. Again, this just gives your overall painting just a different look. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is add a stem to our cherry. And you can either just stick with the dark brown that you have on your plate, or if you want to whip out some black, you're more than welcome to do that as well. For the sake of just using what is on my plate, I'm going to stick with my dark brown. And it's just going to be a line going from your top of your cherry and extending outwards. Real nice and simple, just like that. Not too hard. Okay, there we have it, our finished ice cream cone. So delicious looking, you could eat it. Probably don't want to, but it's not going to taste the same, but still super cute. All right, there you have it, your finished ice cream cone. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments in the video or message me if you need any help at all. Thank you for joining. Bye.